I'd like myself, if I may, to say something. I'd like myself, if I may, to say something. I'd like myself, if I may, to say something, the best of which in any case was highly mathematical and technical, and therefore not really accessible to the non-specialist. And we're going to try and rectify that a bit, and as far as is possible in the short space of a single programme, to bring out clearly the main line. This not easy task is being taken on by Anthony Quinton, Fellow of New College, Oxford, who don't really have any idea at all of what he did or why it's important. Now we must go back to the beginning and follow the story through in terms of the ideas involved.
First of all, that language has to fit the world very directly in that it has to be constituted, a meaningful assertion, a meaningful proposition, has to be constituted of names that fit directly onto objects, that are exactly correlated with the objects they're the names of.
Regarded from that day to this as work of genius. It resulted in the only book of his to be published during his lifetime.
The shortest way of stating the central problem of the book is as follows. How is language possible?
Published in Austria in 1929 and in England in 1920. It was published in Austria in 1921 and in England in 1922. I think many of the people watching this programme might not see at once why that is a problem. People inclined to take language for granted.
I think it's just one of those questions that seems so obvious that most people don't bother to ask. People had assumed, made all sorts of assumptions about meaning previously, how people attach meaning to words. Oh, rocks bang against rocks, moons influence tides, and so on.
There's two sets of questions. What is the relationship of language to the world? And what is the relationship of language to thought?
Of language, the understanding of language, our communication with our fellow men, of course, principally, but not exclusively, takes place through it. And said, how in general is it possible for human beings, by producing marks on paper or making noises, to represent something that was utterly different in character from the marks and noises used to represent them?
You've mentioned the limits of what could be expressed in language and discovering what the limits were to what language could do.
That the limits of language were clearly stateable. This limits language, in a sense, to description of that which is outside language.
This is made possible by language, or at least partly made possible by language.
The limiting feature of that. Oh God, I'm sorry, I've foozled it. I've lost the second thing.
That's all right. No, well, you said there were. Why should the very existence of language present a philosophical problem?
There's this apparently not very helpful answer at first glance, but right towards the end he says anyone who understands my propositions will recognize that they're senseless, and then tries to mitigate the paradox by saying you must conceive them as a ladder on which he's mounted to a level of understanding which he then kicks away.
This is a unique phenomenon in the whole history of philosophy. A philosopher of genius producing two different and incompatible philosophies, each of which decisively influenced a whole generation.
The proposition could have a definite sense unless it was ultimately made up of these fundamental pictorial propositions.
Well, now, sorry,
He doesn't give any examples of these.
Let me recapitulate this to see if we got it absolutely clear between us.
The real function of language is the describing of fact, truly if possible, falsely if meaningful.
Then my utterance is meaningless.
That's correct.
Immediate query that occurs to one is this. A great many of the things that we say are false or untrue.
Purports to tell one all sorts of things about the world, when what it is in fact doing is saying things in a hidden dialogue, in a hidden dialect, a code almost, about the relation of language to the world, which has to be shown and can't be described.
Now, what about the unsayable?
They're just said to be not part of language proper.
This is a very eccentric thing for anyone to say, isn't it?
Is not a fact about which discourse can proceed. relation of language to the world itself couldn't be meaningfully represented in language or discussed in language. And so philosophy, as it were, undermines itself in this mode of argument.
What does the theory of language as we've now drawn it out have to say about what can't be said?